Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's another episode. It's another Monday. AKP Sports Talk. That's RM Korea. Look, we're just going to get right into it. Divisional round came and went. We have now entered conference championship mode. And the first game of the slate this weekend was a game that was, interesting for multiple reasons. Obviously, the Chiefs got the win 27-20. The Jags did cover that spread. But, obviously, Mahomes early on, he had that high ankle sprain. It was very scary injury. A lot of people were, concerned just in that moment because, it was a very close game at that time. And, it could have gone either way. But, Mahomes is always going to Mahomes. And even on one leg, he can still throw the ball and, make plays for this Chiefs offense that, really needed him when it kind of mattered. But, I mean, at the same time, Chad Henne, he led a goal-to-goal pretty much drive that wasted so much time off the clock. He used time management well, and they ended up scoring. So that could have been the difference maker in the end. But, the Jags played it with their hearts out. Obviously, they had nothing to lose. It came down to a late interception by Jalen Watson. Obviously, go Cougs. Jalen Watson, obviously, the incredible one-handed interception while the pass was going to Zay Jones on the right side. A little bit of a floater. Maybe Trevor Lawrence just, wasn't connecting as much with Zay Jones because he wasn't even looking for the ball. But, definitely a fun game to watch. I love this Chiefs secondary. I think it's a very, very good secondary. And I think, when we look forward to that matchup later on this week in the AFC Championship, it's going to be tested against, the Bengals offense that, definitely loves to throw downfield. And, we've seen Joe Burrow do Joe Burrow things. But, focusing on this game real quick, Ari, look, the Chiefs weren't as dominant, as a lot of people thought because, obviously the spread was, a little high. But, they kept it when it really mattered, their defense really stepped up. And that's something that, we haven't really attributed that much because, we always just love Patrick Mahomes and what he does for this Chiefs team. And, now this defense is really stepping up when it matters, only allowing this Jacksonville team only 20 points on the day. It was kind of pretty much over before they got that last second field goal to make it a 7-point game, for the bettors out there. But what were your thoughts after this game? Just do the Chiefs still look as dominant as they do now that they have a huge threat coming in on Sunday? And then for the Jags, obviously they had a miracle season. What do you think kind of is next for this Jacksonville team in terms of, whether it's, adding more defensive special, picking up that offense? What do you like from the Jags and the Chiefs game on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I guess starting off with Jacksonville, obviously it was a great season. I think it's pretty clear that defense will be their focus because, I mean, I think a lot of people forget that they traded for Calvin Ridley, so they're getting him next season. So I think their offense is pretty much set. Like, they don't really need to maybe offensive line a little bit, but yeah, I mean, obviously it's a great season getting this far for the Chiefs. I mean, obviously the big question this week will be Mahomes and his status because obviously, you don't know if it was adrenaline or whatnot that Mahomes is playing on, and if his ankle will swell up in the next couple of days. Obviously, we don't know, so we'll kind of have to wait and see. But I mean, I think the biggest key for the Chiefs in this game compared to the other AFC team that lost, that we'll get into, the Bills, is that the Chiefs were able to establish a run game. I think that was the biggest difference in this game, especially when Chad Henne led that touchdown drive. They were able to establish the run. Pacheco had that big run in that drive, and he had 12 for 95 yards on the ground in the game. So I think that's the big difference for the Chiefs offense and how they were able to kind of keep afloat even when Mahomes was, basically playing on one leg for even the second half. But I mean, even Mahomes on one leg is better than like 80% of the quarterbacks in the league. So, yeah, I mean, obviously it was a 7-point win, but it was still a great performance by the defense, as you said, and the offense, did enough to what they had to do to pull off the victory. So, I mean, historically, the Chiefs are like one of the worst teams at covering the spread for what that's worth. But obviously, they still win, and that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, a win is a win at the end of the day, no matter if it's sloppy or, a dominant win. And, as you mentioned, this Jacksonville team, they definitely have a lot looking, forward to look for. You mentioned that trade with Calvin Ridley, and now after a year of suspension, they get him back to pair up with, Christian Kirk, who they paid all that money to. They still have Zay Jones in that receiving core. Marvin Jones, Evan Ingram produced as well. He was a big threat for them throughout the season. And then ETN on the ground, he is as the only thing that's kind of really holding him back mostly is just his consistency holding the ball in terms of his fumbles. But I feel like that's one off season where you can just work on that. And, who knows where he could be. He could honestly be a top 10 running back next year, potentially, just because of how much offense production the Jags really had this year. You mentioned, I think they're just really a good defense away, or, maybe some tweaks on defense. I feel like they're just right there to potentially owning the AFC South division for the future because, the other three teams in there are definitely going in the wrong direction with Colts rebuilding. The Texans are already in their rebuild once again. And then you have the Titans, who are in this really confusing state because, I feel like sometimes they want to move on from Tannehill, but at the same time, because of how dominant that offense is, the defense has to step up and it doesn't step up. So I feel like this Jags team is definitely the only team really heading in the right direction. So I feel like their 2023-2024 campaign is definitely going to be fun to watch. And then we mentioned this Chiefs team. And look, the run game for them was so huge on Saturday. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco, that's the 7th round draft pick out of Rutgers. And, he's been someone that, has taken over Clyde Edwards-Helaire's role throughout the season. And that was something that was not really expected, but, it turned out to be a really big positive for this offense because, I mean, we saw it on that one run where Pacheco goes up the middle, bounces off, and just goes up the sideline. And you can see his, speed. It's there. And I feel like that's what the Chiefs are definitely going to be leaning a lot to if they want to, advance to the Super Bowl. I feel like establishing the run game early and wasting all that clock because who knows the full health of Patrick Mahomes. He says obviously he's going to be playing, but, it's not the same Mahomes as healthy Mahomes because, healthy Mahomes is great. He obviously because he can scramble out and make plays, but, once he already has limited his own ability to scramble, it's going to be a lot harder for him to really make those plays out in the open if he's hobbling on one leg.
And going back to Pacheco, it's like his play style is such a good complement to the offense because they have all these speed and finesse players, and you have to worry about all those players. And then you got Pacheco, who's more like a downhill bulldozer type of running back. So that's what makes it even tougher to defend is just how he complements his play style to what everyone else does on the offense.
Exactly. It really just fits what the Chiefs offense is really looking for right now. And I believe that Pacheco will definitely be the lead back heading into next year and, finish off his rookie campaign on a high note. And, I'm excited to see what the AFC Championship holds for him and the Chiefs. But, obviously the bigger question is what is the full health status of Mahomes? Obviously, yesterday they said that he is going to be playing, but it's obviously his x-rays are negative. And he said he felt a lot better, but, he could be hobbling, as he practices throughout the week and getting ready for the game. So we'll see we'll see what happens in the AFC Championship game, but definitely a great game on Saturday afternoon. But now Saturday night, however, this game was ugly. This game was bad. For all of us Giants plus 7.5 bettors, I know it was hard to watch, but the Eagles pretty much owned this game. Another team that just owned the run game you want to talk about it. I mean, the Eagles just ran Jalen Hurts didn't even have to do that much because the Eagles just owned them on the ground. I mean, I believe the Eagles ran for, I think, almost over
268 yards.
Literally almost 300 yards. The offense ran for almost 300 yards. Obviously, Hurts had a couple passing TDs to Goddard and Devontae Smith, but, Gainwell on the ground and Sanders combined for over 200 rushing yards. You add along Jalen Hurts, and you add along Boston Scott, and they ran for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, that is pretty much how this game went. And, Daniel Jones and that offense, it really, really struggled, especially against a really good Eagles secondary that, already had forced an interception on him and, getting that pressure up front because as I'm pretty sure as we talked about it heading into the game last week, this Eagles defense was way, way different from the Vikings defense. The Vikings defense was one of the worst in football. This Eagles defense has definitely proven themselves to be a very, very good defense that can get pressure on the quarterback, can have one of the best secondaries, and then just with how they played together really complements their games. And, that was pretty much the story. Saquon was pretty much limited the whole time. He only had 9 carries for 61 yards. And, it just looked like this Giants offense kind of fizzled out after their game against the Vikings on the road. And, the Eagles went on to win 38-7. And it's kind of funny that, that game on Saturday, 5 years ago, that's the game that the Vikings lost 38-7 to the Eagles to go on to the Super Bowl. So same score, same day. Maybe it's telling of what's going to happen this year. Who knows? But pretty much this defense dominated the whole game. The ground game for the Eagles was just working all game. And, I feel like the pressure was just getting to Daniel Jones. I mean, they got 5 sacks on him. Look, Ari, the Eagles looked a lot better than I had anticipated them to look on Saturday. I thought this Eagles team, even though that they were well rested and they were getting healthier, I still thought that this Eagles team was the Eagles team that we saw, maybe against the Cowboys or, against the Giants the last week of the season, when they struggled to win. And I thought it was going to be a closer game. But, even with Jalen Hurts not doing much in the air, and that's what he's kind of been doing all season, they got a really good job of just doing it on the ground. And, the Eagles are definitely a Super Bowl favorite just in terms of how their offense produces and, what their defense does to opposing quarterbacks, especially at Lincoln Financial, which is a very, very hostile environment. But I want to ask, what do you think of this Eagles team? Obviously, they have a tough challenge next Sunday against, the 49ers. And for the Giants, obviously, a fantastic season once again. They weren't even supposed to be a 9-win team. And, they started out 7-2, and everyone was like, wow, this team is maybe actually for real just because of how the defense works. And, their offense fits what Daniel Jones does, and he runs the ball. And even without a star wide receiver, Kenny Golladay, they still get production done offensively. And so, what do you look for the Giants this offseason in terms of what they need to do? Because obviously the bigger questions are what they're going to do with Jones and Barkley, because those are two of the that's their offense pretty much. And those are 2 names that are either being talked about free agency or maybe picking up the option and giving them an extension. We'll see. And then for this Eagles team, I mean, are they the favorites now? I mean, just the way they won. Obviously, we always talk about how hard it is to always beat an opponent 3 times in the season. And, the Seahawks and the Giants are definitely making us look dumb when we say that. But, I mean, the Eagles, we talked about it last week. 2 out of the 3 times this Eagles team has beat the Giants, they have beaten them by at least 20. And this is a good Giants defense. And so what does this mean for the Eagles now that they're playing against, the Niners, who have the best defense in football? And for the Giants, what does their offseason look like in terms of a potential offensive change, or what do they have to do on offense to get it done?
Yeah, I mean, I think starting with the Giants, obviously similar to the Jaguars, where they were playing with not much to lose and making it this far already in the playoffs. I'd be shocked if they didn't re-sign Jones and Barkley. I think that making it this far, despite this is basically the same team that they had the year before where they were awful. So I think that they're definitely going to keep those 2. I'd be shocked if they didn't re-sign Jones and Barkley. And I think in the draft, in the first round, and I think a receiver will be a priority, depending on who's available. Maybe a free agency, but I think the draft's probably more likely for a receiver. And then I think linebacker is probably the biggest defensive need for them because they have a pretty good pass rush. It wasn't really present in this game, but it's still pretty good. And then the secondary, when fully healthy, maybe another corner, but I think linebacker is probably the biggest need for the Giants. But they're definitely still going to be competitive, I think, next year as well as they were this year, as they get another year of Jones and Barkley working with Dable, obviously. But yeah, it did not take long into this game to know that it was not going to be close. Obviously, it was 14-0, like right out of the gate. I was a little confused with the Giants' game plan because last week against the Vikings, we saw Jones, kind of roll out of the pocket like almost every play consistently, and either take off and run or at least extend plays outside the pocket. But in this game, it seemed like he tried to be more of a pocket passer, which is what you can't be against Eagles pass rush and how they can get to the quarterback. So I think as soon as I saw all of that, it was over. And obviously they averaged, it was over 6 yards per carry on the ground. So obviously that combined with the offensive what they were doing, it was not it was a recipe for disaster basically. So credit to the Eagles. They're the number one seed, obviously, for a reason. I didn't think that they were going to lose. I thought that the Giants would at least make it a little bit more competitive, but obviously that was not the case. And yeah, we get the top two teams in the NFC, which we'll get to a little bit later, obviously, playing next week.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about this Giants team and how this was a very similar roster from last year to this year. The only really big changes was the coaching staff and bringing in Brian Dable from Buffalo and, what he has done with this Giants team. He's made, Giants fans pretty much believe that this team can really be a contender next year. And, as you mentioned, I feel like they're definitely a wide receiver away on offense from really, making some noise. Maybe targeting like an Addison or a JSN in the draft potentially, but, since wide receivers are probably not going to be the heavy target in the first round, maybe wait until the second, find someone like maybe a star later. But, and then also linebacker, you mentioned as well, because, they definitely have Thibodeau up front, and he is pretty much the lead pass rusher for this Giants team. And he is the one that, he is basically like the Nick Bosa's or the Micah Parsons, someone who can get in, the quarterback's face, force pressure, and, force him to make a bad throw. And in the secondary, obviously, Adoree Jackson has done his thing, McKinney, Xavier McKinney as well. And I feel like they're definitely just maybe like someone like a linebacker presence away, from definitely taking that next step. But, Giants fans obviously should be grateful for just an amazing season they've had. I mean, incredible. I didn't even think the Giants were going to win more than like 6 games, but, they won 9. They were the 6th seed. They beat a good offensive team in the Minnesota Vikings on the road. And, even though they got beat down pretty badly against the Eagles, they still had a pretty great season no matter what. And you can't deny that. And for this Eagles team, if they're just going to keep putting it on the ground, that's a recipe for success for them. The Eagles, they haven't really used the ground game so much is because Hurts has just been throwing the ball so well to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and now they got Dallas Goedert back, who they missed for a little bit of time as well, as kind of the third option for that passing game. And then, Hurts, obviously, he can get it done on the ground as well, and that's undeniable, and we've seen what he can do. And then, just the backs that all contributed, Kenneth Gainwell and Miles Sanders both putting up almost 200 yards combined. I think a little over 200 yards combined and a touchdown. And then Hurts got on the ground, got a TD, and Boston Scott got a TD. So 3 rushing touchdowns and over almost 300 yards. That definitely is a signal that, the offensive ground game could, be the reason why they have these big dominant wins. And, as you mentioned, they were averaging 6 yards a carry, just running through the Giants defense, which seemed to be, just struggling at all day to contain, any kind of offensive run game for the Eagles. And, we'll see what happens next week or against the Niners, who, definitely have a top 10 rushing defense. So, definitely going to be an intriguing matchup for the Eagles. But, they're definitely a scary team, and their defense can get it done, especially with that crowd behind them. It's loud and the environment is just very hectic, and it's definitely going to be a very fun game to watch on Sunday. But this Eagles team is definitely a contender. And, a lot of people were saying that they were a pretender just because of how they kind of, were down the stretch or, those bad losses to like a good, like the Commanders when they lost on Monday night or, when they lost to the Eagle, no, excuse me, when they lost to the Cowboys on Christmas Eve. And, even though it wasn't Gardner Minshew's fault, it wasn't the best play. And, all that noise, they still got a really dominant win at home. And, now they host the NFC Championship game once again. And the last time they did that, they put up 38. So, we'll see what happens on Sunday. But this Eagles team is definitely scary. They definitely have momentum right now as well. And, a lot. And that's why, like, when it was getting ugly early, like when it was 21-0, I was getting a little concerned because I was like, wait a minute, I thought this Giants team had all the momentum heading into this game, off of that big win in Minnesota, a close loss against the same Eagles team that they just played about a few weeks before. Well, all that can go out the window because the Eagles came to play. And, there was that post-practice conference from Jalen Hurts where he said, like, I'm not hungry, I'm starving. And, that's a dangerous mindset to have. And, the Eagles are definitely going to be scary on Sunday when they play the Niners. But we're heading into Sunday's slate now, and the morning game in a very, very snowy Buffalo. And, the whole Damar Hamlin situation coming back to the stadium for the first time. And, all the emotions because this was the rematch that we did not get obviously back in week 16 on Monday night between these two squads, between the Bengals and Bills. And, all the noise and all of the extra, build up for this game pretty much all got wiped away when the Cincinnati Bengals just absolutely wiped the Buffalo Bills yesterday. I mean, even with this snow, because, that was a big concern because as soon as I saw the snow coming down, I was like, oh no, is Joe Burrow going to be doing this in the snow? And he did exactly that. I mean, it was getting ugly early. I mean, obviously it was 14-0 at first, but the Bills were kind of not, I wouldn't say handed opportunities, but there were some questionable calls. Obviously, one of the bigger calls was that controversial touchdown or no TD with Jamar Chase. Who knows what would have happened if that was 21-0 instead of 17, or I believe the Bills scored before that, but it doesn't matter anyway. Look, Ari, the Bengals, we always have said throughout the season, a lot of people have been saying that, maybe the Super Bowl hangover is hitting the Bills. Hitting the Bengals a little bit. They had that 3-4 start. There was questions on where this offense is going and, what they need to do in terms of saving their season. And then they went on this winning streak and haven't even looked back. They have won pretty much 11 in a row, kind of similar to the Niners, just dominant wins. And, this was pretty much one of their biggest wins of the season, going up to Buffalo, beating the Bills, moving on to the AFC Championship. Jamar Chase had a great game. The defense for the Bills really suffered today. And obviously, you can credit to the absence of Von Miller and that pass rush because we knew it was going to be a big loss, but I didn't know how much of a loss it was going to be until I saw what I saw yesterday when Joe Burrow had so much time in that pocket and he looked so comfortable as the game went on, just slinging the ball downfield. And, the Bengals on defense, they looked like they were ready to play. I mean, in that environment, with just everything happening, Allen had a really, really bad game, just did not really seem to get any offense going. And, and then obviously with the late interception, it just kind of sealed it. This offense was just out of sync. There we saw Stephon Diggs very verbally upset on the sideline with Josh Allen, pretty much cussing him out and screaming right at him like he doesn't even care. And then obviously it came out that Stephon Diggs pretty much darted to the locker room, didn't even talk to anyone. And, he left, and then Duke Johnson, of all people, brought him back just to leave not even that much after. So, it's definitely, there's some questions now of, is Stephon trying to force his way out of Buffalo? Does he not like it? Or, there's that offseason drama that's going to come up with this. But, this is a very deflating loss for a Bills team that, not only was a Super Bowl favorite as you had them in your pick versus the Niners, which I'm sorry to say that's not hitting anymore, but for a Bills team that started off so hot and was one of the Super Bowl favorites, and I believe almost every single star analyst or sports analyst had the Bills in the Super Bowl, and just for all that to kind of come in this really, really deflating loss at home where the offense completely struggled. The defense could not stop Joe Burrow or get any pressure up front. What do the Bills do this offseason? What does the Bills offseason look like? There's going to be a lot more questions, I believe, now with all this drama around Stephon Diggs. I feel like, there's a little bit of an elevated question on what do the Bills need to do to actually make it to the Super Bowl, because they're turning into pretty much the Cowboys who, get all this offseason hype and say, oh, they're definitely a Super Bowl favorite or a Super Bowl candidate, and they don't even make it to the Super Bowl or barely make it to the AFC Championship game. And, what is it going to take for this Bills team to really take it to the next level? And then obviously for the Bengals, I feel like they're definitely the favorites now because, Joe Burrow, we talk about what he has done in this AFC, and he's kind of the king of the castle right now. Like, let's be real, he's kind of the king of the jungle. He has beaten Mahomes 3 times since their first meeting, I believe, in the AFC Championship, or no, in the regular season back in the 2021 season. And then there was the AFC Championship, and then there was the meeting this year, and he has beat them every single time. And knowing that, coming into Sunday against Mahomes, who is already banged up, I feel like this Bengals team is just destined to go make it back to the Super Bowl, after just how they've played offensively. Ari, what do you like? Do you like this Bengals team right now in just terms of how they're playing offensively, with Joe Burrow just doing what he does best and just slinging the ball accurately, finding Chase, his number one target, T. Higgins obviously emerging, mixed on the ground as well. Hayden Hurst has been a huge, big addition to this offense, and, they've used him a lot more. And, the defense is actually really stepping up as well. We saw it with the week 1 wild card round, the Sam Hubbard 99-yard TD, and then, Eli Apple really doing a good job on Stephon Diggs on Sunday yesterday. Are these Bengals team the favorite again? To come out of the AFC. What do you think? What do you like from this Bengals team? And then for the Bills, another season where their Super Bowl dreams are crushed by the divisional round or the AFC Championship. What do they do now?
Yeah, obviously Joe Burrow was great and deserves, all the credit and all of that. But I think their defense deserves just as much credit, holding the Bills to 10 points. They had the one touchdown drive, and outside of that one drive, they were dominated, the rest of the game basically. I alluded to it earlier with the Chiefs about the run game and how the Bills had no run game. I think that's the biggest difference for the Bills offense compared to the Bengals, where Joe Mixon was getting everything he wanted on the ground. And that was big because Mixon kind of struggled at times during the regular season getting going. And so getting him to rush for over 100 yards was big to open up the passing game for Burrow. And on the other side, the Bengals had no, and for good reason, no respect for the Bills' run game because they had no run game. And so I think, they've kind of ignored that and kind of used Josh Allen more as a runner the past year or two. And I think now they kind of have to realize that they need an actual running back run game to help open up the offense and help balance attack. It can't be all Josh Allen 99% of the time. So I don't play too much into how much Stephon Diggs. I think it's all the emotion with Diggs. There might be some drama, but there's drama with Debo. This past offseason, nothing happened. So I give like a 1% chance that he gets moved or whatever. But obviously my future was broken with this. The 49ers did what they did, and we'll get into that after this. But the Bills, they just did not show up at home. You thought maybe the weather would kind of play into their favor, being at home, playing more in the snow than the Bengals did. And the Bengals are missing 3 offensive linemen, and it looked like the Bills' offensive line was the one missing 3 starters, not the Bengals. So Credit to the Bengals. They are obviously clearly the better team, and Burrow's kind of been playing better in the playoffs. Like the regular season, he was good, obviously, but he's played better in the playoffs last year and then this year too. So obviously, that's part of what makes a quarterback great is winning in the playoffs when it matters the most, and that's what Burrow's done. And we're going to get a rematch of last year's AFC Championship, as you said, this year too, between the Bengals and Chiefs. I know all the talk all week this week is going to be how Burrow's 3-0 against Mahomes in his career and all of that. I just hope Mahomes is at least close to 100%. He's not going to be fully healthy playing with the high ankle sprain, obviously, but the Bengals pass rush was able to get to Josh Allen. So if they can get to a hollow Mahomes like that, it's going to be tough on Kansas City. But if anyone can do it, it's Mahomes. But yeah, we'll see later in the week.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this whole first going on to the Bills, I kind of feel like this whole Stephon Diggs drama is just more of frustration of, another game where they just can't get it done in the playoffs and, all that drama. I don't think he's getting moved anywhere. I feel like it was just, a little bit of an over exaggeration on his part. But I feel like what is interesting is the fact that, Duke Johnson, a teammate, brought him back and he left like a few minutes later. So maybe it was just a little more frustration, but, I feel like the Bills are really, and you mentioned it, the Bills are missing a run game. And, I don't feel like Devin Singletary alongside James Cook and, they also got Naeem Hines. I just don't feel like that combination is doing it right. I feel like they need, someone who fits their system a lot better in terms of, like a play action kind of back who can be like a 3-down back, kind of like a CMC in a way. And I feel like that's why I was so, on board with CMC going to the Bills. There was a rumor that, with the Panthers who were trying to trade Christian, there was rumors that he was going to go to the Bills. And I was like, that is literally all the Bills need to really be a playoff contender, because you pair McCaffrey with that offense. And I feel like obviously he's doing very, very well in San Fran, but I feel like he is the glue that, the Bills were kind of looking for in the run game. And so, and you mentioned it, the Bills not really having a run game really got to them. And Cincinnati being able to get to Josh Allen and force pressure and pressured throws, that was kind of the key, for that offense to really struggle. And, the whole Bills secondary played great, forcing, breakups and turnovers as well. You got to really attribute the defense. And you talked about Joe Burrow, right? And how he only gets better in the postseason. And we've been seeing it for a lot now. We've seen quarterbacks who can have all these great regular season records and be a regular season MVP and, do things against teams that, either are worse than them or, not that great. And then, when the playoffs come and, those are the games that really matters. And for quarterbacks out there, it's all about how you do versus a team that is at the same level as you in a win-or-go-home game. And Joe Burrow has consistently just been shining in this postseason. Obviously, he has, I think, a 5-1 record as the Bengals QB in the playoffs. I think that's like the most they've had all in franchise records. So, Burrow just keeps doing Burrow things, and the offense is going to be consistently great with just how many weapons they have in this in the receiving core, and then how Mixon on the ground is just dominant. I believe in Pirine. Samaje Pirine is a solid 2 behind Mixon, and he has pretty much that similar kind of stature where he can just ground it out for some more yards and be a catching back as well for Joe Burrow. And I just feel like this Bengals team is just destined to do it this year. And even though they came up just a bit short last year, I feel like they can definitely do it this year. And you mentioned, it's already going to be – it was hard enough for Josh Allen, who was fully healthy, to get any kind of offense going. Who knows what it's going to be with injured Patrick Mahomes, who obviously you talked about earlier, the whole narrative, Joe Burrow being undefeated against Patrick Mahomes right now. And that was when Patrick Mahomes was fully healthy. And, now that he's not, there's so many speculation on what this game's going to be like. But, for this Bills team, I feel like, getting that pass rush going again is definitely going to be one thing that they look forward to in this offseason. maybe even looking toward getting another back in terms of free agency, maybe, because I feel like there's going to be some solid backs out there who are free agents. But, there's so many. I feel like the Bills are right there. We always say, I feel like the top 3 teams in the AFC are kind of like all at the top, and it's the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Bengals, and they're all kind of at the top, right? But when they have to face each other, that's when you see who's really like near the top. And I feel like it goes the Bengals, then the Chiefs, then the Bills. And I feel like this Bills team is right there. They're right there, but I feel like they're just one either running back or defensive end away from really cementing themselves as a team that can actually get it done in the playoffs. And it's a shame because, I obviously had the Bills making to the Super Bowl this year too, because of just how I thought, how good their defense looked and how dominant they are. But, we mentioned it. As soon as that Von Miller injury happened and he was done for the season, I feel like that really changed how that Bills defense pretty much operates. And, they weren't getting that much pressure on the quarterback. And then we saw the collision between, I believe it was Trey White and Jordan Poyer on that pass to T. Higgins. And that was just another big blow to their secondary. So, just the injuries, man, that it's just hard to say. It's hard to say you want to limit injuries, but it pretty much is down to injuries. I mean, just Von Miller going down, that really took a big hit to their pass rush. And, this Bills team is always going to be right there. But, I feel like they're just one more acquisition away from being the team in the Super Bowl instead of the team that can make the playoffs. So, this Bills team, they definitely going to have a big offseason in terms of, figuring out what their last piece is, maybe look toward the draft. And, the Bengals, there's going to be so many storylines, as you mentioned, about Burrow versus Mahomes, I believe round 4 for them. And, Mahomes is already down 3-0, so maybe he can make a 3-1 comeback. We'll see. But, this Bengals team is really hot, and they're playing their best ball right now. And, it's definitely going to be hard for Mahomes to really, if he's not fully healthy, it's going to be a great battle to see how that offensive line of the Chiefs, really is able to stand up against the defensive line of the Bengals. And now heading into the final game of the divisional round slate, in a game where I knew this was going under, and I'm glad that I put the under because, man, this game was ugly. We saw Brett Maher miss another kick for Brett Maher. He went 0 for 5. And I know
he can hit field goals, not extra points.
Exactly. He can hit a 40-something yard field goal, but he can't make an extra point. Unbelievable. But anyways, Niners got the win at home. It was a close game, but Dak Prescott and there were so many times where that Cowboys offense was right there. But look what I said. I said the Niners love to turn over the ball. They love to force turnovers, and they got 2 picks. One of them was because Dak Prescott just was trying to throw it out of bounds, but that just ended up right. I forgot whose was in his defender's hand, and he ran it back, and that was just already in their own territory. So that just set up the Niners even more better. And then the second one, obviously, that was tipped off of Jimmy Ward going to Fred Warner. That one. I mean, that one. I feel like that was also a bad read on Dak, just because he didn't even see Ward coming up from his zone spot, and CeeDee Lamb, that was already a traffic throw, and that was already behind him. And there's some just questionable throws from Dak. And this Cowboys defense, I knew they were going to step up, and they did. They limited McCaffrey all day. That was something that the Niners really leaned on, just the run game. And even though Brock Purdy didn't have the cleanest game, the offense did just enough. And George Kittle kind of saved the day, and he did it in a one can't catch off the helmet, looking to the sky, catching it again. That's just the magic of George Kittle. And this Niners team, even though it wasn't the cleanest win, a win is a win. And when you force pressure against Dak Prescott, one of the more questionable quarterbacks in this league, that's definitely going to prove evident. And there were so many times where this Cowboys team, especially even in the last 2 minutes, where they could have got some kind of points, because obviously it was 19-12. it's already fourth down and they're punting from almost their own end zone, right? And you're thinking like they're gonna try and punt it quick because it's almost a 2-minute warning. They have 3 timeouts. Try to get the Niners to run more plays, to not use as many timeouts. And Mike McCarthy, they're taking their time, getting on the field, and I'm starting to question why are they taking so much time with the punt. The punt takes a while, doesn't even land well, even off the line drive, and then they do get the ball back, right? They make the stop. They get the ball back, right? And, I'm thinking, okay, well, now they got the ball back. Maybe they can do something, 45 seconds, no timeouts. They got to go down the field. First, they find Dalton Schultz, right? And he makes a spectacular catch, but he gets tackled going the wrong way. And I'm like, come on, man. You got to, like, at least go forward. And then that runs more time off the clock. And then they do the hurry-up offense again instead of spiking it. And then they find Schultz again. He catches it, but then he gets 1 foot in bounds. And I'm like, Dalton Schultz, what are you doing again? You got to have 2. You got to know. And it's just silly mistakes. And then whatever the hell that last play was. I mean, Zeke under center with like 3 linemen and like CeeDee Lamb on one side with Turpin in the slot. And then Zeke gets bulldozed by Fred Warner. What a surprise. And then Dak Prescott has to throw a quick pass over the middle to Turpin, and he gets bulldozed right when he gets hit. And I'm just like, what were the Cowboys doing on that whole last drive? The matter of fact, what were the Cowboys doing in the last 2 minutes of the game? And that's where I feel like this Cowboys team definitely got to slip away from them. Ari, look, the Cowboys have not made an NFC Championship game since 1995. I mean, my God, what? It seems like this Cowboys team every year, right? They always say, we're going to the Super Bowl, right? We're going to the Super Bowl, right? And they don't even make it to the conference championship game. And so now the questions, I don't believe are toward Mike McCarthy. Right now, I believe they're toward, Kellen Moore and his offensive play calling, or, maybe even Dak and what, like, you paid this man so much money and he's producing, like this. And, I mean, 13 picks in 9 games really says a lot. And, there's so many questions with what the Cowboys do offensively just because, now they lost Tony Pollard, and with his broken foot, they didn't really make any adjustments in terms of their offense because the Niners, all they really wanted to do was stop Tony Pollard. Well, they stopped him by fortunately getting him injured. And now the Cowboys are in a position where they have to adjust. They didn't adjust. And then for the Niners, they didn't need to adjust. They just kind of kept what they do. And they just, were getting these first downs, slowly moving down the field, taking time off the clock, whether it was Elijah Mitchell or Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. They were doing what they needed to do to get the win against a top defense at home. And Ari, what do the Cowboys do? I mean, we say this every season. They are always either a team in contention or a team that should be a Super Bowl contender, and they go 12-5. They have a great season. They dominate the Bucs on the road in the wild card, and then, the game where their offense needed to show up, they disappeared. And so offensively, where does this Cowboys team go next? And then for this Niners team, obviously, it wasn't the cleanest win offensively because, they love their offensive weapons, whether it's Ayuk, Debo, CMC, Elijah Mitchell, George Kittle, even Jawan Jennings, all of these names, and then obviously led by mystery relevant Brock Purdy. And then, the defense, we know that defense is one of the top best defenses in the National Football League. But they're going up against a passing offense that, loves to throw the ball deep. And, the Niners secondary is not as good as their pass rush or their rushing or the rush defense. And so for this Niners team, are they in trouble on the road potentially? Or, is Brock Purdy going to, somehow pull out this one on the road? We'll see. But, Ari, first, what do the Cowboys do? And then what do you like from this Niners win as they head into Philadelphia next weekend?
Yeah, I mean, credit to both defenses. They both played well, but Also, both quarterbacks were really bad. Obviously, Dak had the bad plays in the stat sheet, and Purdy didn't. But the Cowboys dropped like 2 or 3 picks that were like right in their hands. Like Trayvon Diggs had that one. I mean, that play was tipped, but still went right through his breadbasket, whatever you want to call it. So, um, obviously the Niners did enough. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it was Kyle Shanahan outsmarting Mike McCarthy to an extent. Although I think Dak is the bigger person to blame than Mike McCarthy also because, the 2 picks were just not good. And then, yeah, I thought when they punted on that 4th and 10 with 2 minutes left, I thought they should have gone for it because they weren't going to stop them realistically. So I thought that was pretty crazy. Even though they were like deep in their own territory, they still at that point should have gone for it. I mean, both teams averaged 3.5 yards per carry, so both defenses stopped the run game, which is I think the biggest focus for both defenses. And at the end of the day, it's just like you mentioned, George Kittle made a couple of big plays that were really the difference in the game in the passing game. Yeah, I mean the better team won, but in an ugly fashion. But like we always say, a win is a win. I think the Eagles open up as a slight favorite next week against the Niners at home, which is to be expected. But I mean, it should be a fun game. Obviously, we're both rooting for the Eagles. I think as Seahawks fans, but we'll see how Purdy shows up. I'm not questioning Purdy, in a quote unquote tough environment because he's 7-0, 8-0 now. How he's undefeated, obviously. So you can't take that away from him. I mean, yeah, like I said earlier with the Eagles, it's the top 2 teams in the NFC will be playing in the NFC Championship, and so I think we can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah, I feel like for this Cowboys team, you mentioned there were times, as I said, there were times when the Cowboys could have easily made this a close game. And one of those times was when Trayvon Diggs, he dropped that easy interception, even though it was tipped, I think at the line or on the pass from Brock Purdy. That fell right in his hands, and it was, I think, a 3-point game, and that's a huge swing. Or there were some, or other times where Brock Purdy has not looked good against a top pass rush that can get to the quarterback. And I feel like there were so many opportunities in this game for the Cowboys to really try and take this game on the road, but they just couldn't do it. And there's questions on whether Dak is the guy anymore. Who knows? But I feel like this offense is just maybe another wide receiver away. I've been hearing obviously rumors about OBJ going to Dallas, and there were so many rumors before the Cowboys eventually went to Ty. But still, there were so many rumors of OBJ going to Dallas, and I feel like that's still going to be one of the bigger conversations this offseason. Since OBJ will probably be a lot healthier, if not fully healthy, probably by the time free agency opens again in March, hopefully for him. But for this Cowboys team, it's always they just come up short and they kind of just do it to themselves. We always talk about how whether or not like a beatdown happens, like the Giants and the Eagles, where the Giants just got beat down. It's not like they did it to themselves. The Eagles just outpowered them. Here, the Cowboys had so many chances to either take the lead or, dominate the game or, at least control the game and the time of possession. And they didn't do either. And that's what kind of this Cowboys year has been. It's always been up and down, and, they can be as high, when they beat the Eagles, but then they lose to the Washington Commanders in a game where they kind of, would either want to win to have momentum heading into the playoffs, but they beat the Bucks, who obviously were not the same team as last year, and then they lose to this Niners team where the offense really struggled, and they couldn't get anything going in the pass game, or if they did, there was, it looked like something was happening with that CD catch. My God, that over the shoulder, turning catch from CeeDee Lamb, that looked like that offense was getting going finally after all of the missed opportunities that they had. But once again, the Cowboys just did it to themselves, and I feel like that's just going to be the mantra for the Cowboys. It kind of always is the mantra. The Cowboys beat the Cowboys. The Niners, I would say, yes, they squeaked by, but I wouldn't say the Niners beat the Cowboys because the Cowboys beat the Cowboys. They did it to themselves. You mentioned with the drops in the secondary or the missed opportunities on offense. The Cowboys just kind of do it to themselves. And then for the Niners team, obviously, I feel like this was the first of many tests for them on their Super Bowl run. Obviously, the Niners never really played a top defense before on their 11 game or how many game winning streak before they played the Cowboys, and the Cowboys was kind of their first true test of a big time defense. And you mentioned it, Brock Purdy did not look good, and that was his first true test, and he definitely had some good throws, and there were some ugly throws, and there were some good plays, and there were some bad plays, and at the end of the day, the Niners offense did just enough because McCaffrey couldn't do anything. He was only getting like about a yard a carry, maybe even 2 to 3. And then, Elijah Mitchell, he had some good runs, but then for the most part, the Cowboys defense on third down was just stepping up and, forcing pressure on Brock Purdy. And, even though he made some good throws or had some luck on his side with the George Kittle tip drill catch, their dominant offense pretty much was able to be shut down by a good Cowboys defense. And, it kind of just paves the way for this NFC Championship next week where the Eagles obviously Brock Purdy's going to be on the road. So that's obviously one factor, Brock Purdy being on the road in a true road environment in a big-time game, where I believe the Eagles definitely are the favorite. I think last time I saw it was like 1.5, maybe 2. And I like this matchup. This is definitely a matchup of, one of the better offenses in terms of the running game and how they, dominate, how they dominated the run game against the Giants, and, how their defense has really stepped up throughout the season and just been consistent, especially in the secondary with Darius Slay, and, hopefully they get Gardner Johnson back, but, they still definitely know how to get it done. And then against the Niners, who obviously have a good total defense, especially the pass rush, but their offense, I feel like is hit or miss just because of who they play. And obviously against the Seahawks, who have a really, really, up and down defense in terms of their running defense, which was near the bottom, but their pass defense, which was kind of near the top. And again, now they played a Cowboys defense who was just significantly better against the pass rush. And now they're playing the Eagles, who I believe have one of the best pass rushes in football. I feel like that's definitely going to be a big test for this Niners team on the road. But, I'm excited to see that matchup. I'm excited to see how, Brock Purdy is able to handle himself in that true road environment against a hungry Eagles team who is definitely not going to be taking this Niners team lightly at all, and vice versa. So I'm definitely excited for that matchup on Sunday. But I believe that's going to be wrapping it up for this episode. We're going to be previewing these games as well, giving us our favorite, lines throughout the week. If they do change or whatever happens in terms of the lines, player props as well, potentially just seeing what, Vegas has for these teams. I believe right now the line is Philly. I think I just checked it. I think it's -2.5. And then I think it's Kansas City -1 for the other AFC Championship games. So, it's definitely going to be a lot of fun. That line is even now. So that they're really calling this 50-50. So, we're definitely going to be bringing those NFC and AFC Championship previews later to you in the week. Obviously, college basketball, we're heading toward February, and then 1 month from February, it's March Madness. So we're going to be doing a lot of football content to wrap up the NFL season, potentially previewing, where some big free agents go and all of that. But, we want to thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget, like, comment, share, subscribe, do all of that fun stuff. Ari, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, yeah, like you said, we'll keep doing football through the season, and then we're just a few weeks away from spring training for baseball, and then, like you said, March Madness. So we'll have a lot more coverage coming up in the coming weeks of other sports as well, other than football.
Yeah, we just want to thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you guys later this week for NFC and AFC Championship previews. Thank you guys for liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing. That's Ari. I'm Korea. We will see you guys later in the week for our AFC and NFC Championship preview. See you guys.